Is Zoro still good in OP14? Hello and welcome to the table, and today I'm back with another One Piece deck tech video. This time talking about a deck some of you might not be expecting, but Roronoa Zoro. While this deck was incredibly good in OP13, it's got a bit weaker in OP14. But I still think it's a little bit better than some people might be saying it is. It doesn't have the best of matchups into something like a Mihawk or a Boa, but it can win into a lot more decks or have a better chance of winning into certain decks than people might be giving this deck credit for. But let's talk about the leader itself and then, explain why I think that is. So, Roronoa Zoro here is a 5k, 5 life, mono green leader that, as long as you have 3 Dawn under him, as an activate main once a turn, if you have battled one of your opponent's characters during this turn, you can set this as active, but you cannot attack your opponent's characters with a base cost of 7 or less during this turn with this leader. So basically, you attack into a thing, and then boom, you kill it, or you don't, shucks, restand it, and then swing at your opponent's face again. You have to have 3 Dawn under it. Oh, that sucks so much. No, it doesn't. If you know anything about Zoro, you know that that's not a problem. So that's the leader. Then, you got the Dawn. But besides that, getting into the first kind of main portion of the deck is the Searchers. Such as 4 copies of Perona, a 1-cost 2k, 1k counter Searcher that, on play, if your leader has the slash attribute, which Zoro does, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal a slash attribute card or a green event, add to your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. Surprisingly, I think this is the most expensive card in the deck now, which is crazy to me. But, it's a really solid card. You want to have this card and 4 copies of this card in the deck no matter what, because it's a little bit good. Besides that, there is also 4 copies of our other Searcher, Kozuki Hiyori. A little bit worse, can be better sometimes, can be a little worse sometimes, but it's still a solid card, because Kozuki Hiyori here is a 1-cost 0 power 1k counter character that, as an activate main, can rest one of your Dawn cards in this character, so basically you spend 2. Then look at the top 5 if your leader is Zoro. Get a slash attribute type card, or green event, add to your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. Sure, it costs 2 in order to search, but you can get searching off of it multiple times. Generally, this Searcher is quite a bit worse than this Perona. You want to prioritize getting this Perona and playing this and searching with this over the Hiyori, because this costs more to search with than, Perona. But, having the ability to maybe search multiple times with this can matter. Not too often, but who knows. But besides the Searchers, then getting into the next pretty giant portion of the deck, we have the Swarm aspect of the deck, which, it takes up a good chunk of the deck, mostly because it's just, you play something that allows you to play another thing, and a lot of those other things just so happen to be the most important cards in the deck. So let's just talk about basically a majority of the rest of the deck with this Swarm part of the video. The first card that allows you to swarm being Dracula Mihawk, a 3-cost 4k power 2k counter character that, on play, if you have 2 or less characters, allows you to play up to 1 Muggy Kingdom type or slash attribute character card with a cost of 4 or less, other than this, from your hand, rested. So, yes, it can counter for 2. That's awesome, but what matters a lot more than that is the fact that, surprisingly enough, a lot more than that is when you have 3 Dawn or 4 Dawn. Sometimes can even be better when you have 4 Dawn. You can play this, and then play one of either 2 cards. The first one being Roronoa Zoro here, which I have 4 copies of. And another spicy card that I haven't seen too many lists run. I'll get to what that card is here in a second. But this card here is a 4-cost 5k 1k counter character that, on play, if your leader has the film or straw hat type, you set up to 2 of your Dawn is active. Well, I think Zoro's a Straw Hat. I don't know for sure. So, yes, you set 2 of your Dons active. On 3 Don, you play this. Playing this Zoro, for example, and then basically it costs 1 resource. And you can put both of those down on Zoro or something like that, and then send 7 into your opponent's face. That's really awesome. Oh, wait, on top of that, end of your turn, you set this character as active. The other thing that's nice about maybe being able to play this on 4 Dawn is you could play this, set 2 Dawn as active with that, with this Zoro. You have 3 Dawn, you put those Dawn on Zoro, your opponent maybe has a rested character, you swing into the rested character. For example, this card's awesome. Having this into a Zoro mirror is really, really nice. Now, are you going to expect that to happen in OP14? Probably not. But outside of just this like mirror matchup, this Zoro could be really solid at resting some of your opponent's early game stuff and allowing you to manage like certain opponents' board states. Like, can't remember the card in Bonnie. Well, like in Bonnie, for example, Bonnie's a really good deck in OP14/EB04, in my opinion. Well, what does Bonnie like to run a lot of? Really cheap blockers. This early on can allow you to get rid of some of those cheap blockers, because your opponent's probably gonna have 2 characters out by the time you play this thing. So then, boom, play this, rest one of your opponent's characters, then swing into it with the Zoro. That's super cool. Or, you know, you're playing it off the Mihawk. Well, at least you got another 5k body. And maybe, you know, you still get the rest off of the on play for this Zoro. You could send your leader Zoro into that card that you rested. Either way, this Roronoa Zoro card, I feel like it's an underrated little piece of spice that a lot of people won't expect, especially considering that, like, people won't really expect Zoro anyways. But a lot of people, if they are playing Zoro, definitely won't expect this. And it can definitely blow someone out in the right matchup. Just saying. I think this card is an underrated gem in the deck. But besides that, there's also another one of the cards that swarms, and all the things you want to play off of that to allow you to swarm. Law, Trafalgar Law. 4 copies of this in the deck, obviously. It's a 6 cost, 6k, no K counter character that so long as you have 1 or less life cards, it gets blocker. And on play, you can bounce one of your characters back to your hand, play up to 1 character with a cost of 5 or less from your hand. Rested. That's a solid effect. You get a potential blocker or just a 6k body, and then get to play another thing off of that, such as a Tashigi. That's really solid. That's pretty good. So yeah, Trafalgar Law. I would say this Law, Tashigi, and then another card I'll get to at the end of the video are the 3 best cards in the entire deck. And what you want to do is you want to play this Law, bounce back something like maybe a Perona Searcher? kind of why you prioritize that, playing that over Hiyori, because Hiyori's likely going to be dead. And you would much rather like to bounce something like a Perona back to hand versus something like a Dracula Mihawk back to hand. Because you're actually maybe going to potentially be able to swing with the Mihawk. Just saying. But so, you play the Law, then you bounce back that, hopefully something like a Perona, and then boom, you play a Tashigi, which is a 5-cost 7k no-K counter character that on play rests up to one of your opponent's characters at the base cost of 6 or less. Then gives 3 rested Dawn to your Roronoa Zoro leader. This card is it the most broken card that has ever been printed to like support a leader ever? No. It's a really damn good card though. It's like, I mean, you look at some of the decks out there, and you look at something like Emu with Empty Throne, like that made Emu way too broken, but this Tashigi, you know, made Zoro, like specifically, this is made for Zoro, and it's like a giant piece of the engine. So, any of your opponents, because there's a lot of things in this game that cost 6 or less, that you would really like to rest if you could. Well, boom, you can rest one of those, then give 3 rested Dawn to your Zoro. Swing into that thing that you just rested. Maybe kill it. Hopefully kill it. Then you restand said Zoro. Then you attack into your opponent's life with that Zoro. And on top of that, you're also developing this 7k body for the low cost of 5 resources, or 6 if you're playing this Law, which is a 6k body on its own that then develops this 7k body. I don't know about you, but that seems really broken and really dumb. Then past that, besides that, Tashigi obviously is the card that you want to play off of the Law. But if you don't have Tashigi, which really sucks if you don't, you can play other things that are pretty solid. Mainly this Cavendish. This is a 5-cost 6k 1k counter character that on play / when attacking, if your leader has the Supernovas type, which, hey, Roronoa Zoro does. That's really cool. And you have no other Cavendish characters. That sucks. You get to set up to 2 of your Dawn as active. This is worse in Zoro than it is in something like Bonnie, where this card really shines and is really busted and broken. However, this Cavendish still can do some really good work because, you know, having the ability to restand some of your Dawn, like being able to attach more Dawn to certain characters, that can be really cool. That can be really nice, you know? But there's other ways that you can get some really dumb, like, bonuses out of this Cavendish, and I'll get to that, you know, later on in the video. But this Cavendish, it's a solid attacking body. You can search it because it's a slash card, like every character in this deck that you're playing. And in general, it's just, like, a threat that your opponent kind of needs to deal with. And that's really nice when you're managing your opponent's board state all the time. So it's really cool. But getting past that, I want to now talk about the defensive cards in the deck. Your counter events, your counter cards, like your things, your 2k counters, and, you know, any blockers. So some of these blockers, or some of these cards, do serve multiple purposes, such as this Kawamatsu, which, in an emergency situation, you can play off of the Law, because this is still a pretty, you know, decently statted card to play off of the Law. It's a 6k body that costs 5, and it counters for 2. Yes, it's not what you would prefer, but in the worst case scenario, it can still, you know, do something. It's not what you prefer, but what are you gonna do? So this, besides being an emergency card to play off of that Law, it also is just gonna be a 2k, searchable 2k counter card. It doesn't really serve much more purpose than that, besides being an emergency card to play. And, I mean, there's nothing else really to say about this card. It's a really solid card in the deck, and I originally never had it in the deck. Now, granted, I say originally, that was like a month and a half ago. But still, when I originally built Zoro at the beginning of OP13, I never had this. Then I realized, wait, this is really good because it can be played off a law if I need to, and it's a searchable 2K, and it's also a decently statted card. So, this, even though it's a simple card, is still a pretty solid card. Also, something that can serve an emergency kind of like usage is the Scratch Mana Poo. It is not a searchable 2K counter, but it is still a very valuable one to have, in my opinion. This one costs 1K counter, or 1K power, 2K counter character. So on play, you rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 2 or less. Again, this isn't searchable, but why is it in the deck? If you have not ever seen a Zoro deck before, you would know that on 7 Dawn, let's say your searcher that you had to play was a Hiyori. That Hiyori is likely dead. Well, you want to play a Law into a TCG, and you have 7 Dawn. Well, what are you gonna do? You don't want to bounce back one of your more important characters, like a Roanoa Zoro. That's a really solid card. So what you do instead is for 1 resource, granted you don't have something like a Hiyori or a Perona in your hand, you play the Scratch Mana Poo, maybe even being able to rest up to one of your opponent's cards. But, more importantly, for 1 resource, you play this, and then you have 6 Dawn left. Then you spend 6 Dawn, bounce this right back to your hand. Sure, you're telling your opponent, hey, I have a 2K counter in hand. But that then allows you to not lose any of the pressure on your board, play the Law into Tashigi, and smile and laugh and watch your opponent cry. So, really nice. Is it like super crazy? No, but it's a 2K counter that, worst case scenario, can allow you to do something that really makes the deck broken and busted and, done. But then, there's also one of the best events ever printed, DMG is what I like to call it, because that name, it's a little bit long, it's a little bit blurry, that's a little less blurry, but still, it's a really long name, so let's just go with DMG. So this event, cost 1, has either a main effect or a counter effect. The counter effect gives one of your leaders 3K power during the battle. 1 cost 3K counter. That's fine. More importantly, why this card's in the deck, yes, emergency counter, that's nice. But what can be a lot more valuable sometimes is its main effect, allowing you to rest 3 of your Dawn, rest up to a total of 2 of your opponent's characters or Dawn cards, and just get the basically on-play effect of Hody Jones, which I've heard is a really powerful card, without you having to, lose a life. That's really nice. You're playing against Emu, and you basically know they have never existed in their hand, and that's the one card that's going to screw you out of winning that turn. You play this, you rest your opponent's Dawn, boom, now they can't play that, and you win. Is that kind of a bad example? Maybe. But it's really important in situations like that, when your opponent has blockers, and you need them rested because you need to, do dumb Zoro things. You need to swing with your board, and you need them to not have the ability to block. You play something like this. Now they, have 2 less blockers. Maybe that's their entire, supply of blockers. Maybe it's just 2 out of the 3 of the blockers. Either way, great help. Your opponent has, standing Dawn. Really valuable for them to have access to counter events. Well, great. You can turn off 2 of those Dawn. Maybe that's just all the Dawn. That's nice. Your opponent has 1 Dawn open and a blocker. You can rest that 1 Dawn and rest that blocker. That's great. This card, simply put, it's really good. Such as Koshiro, which I was just talking about Emu a little bit ago. This is one of the few ways that can allow you to actually win into Emu. Also permitting that, you go second and draw what you need and all that kind of whatnot. But so Koshiro here, 2 cost 1K counter, 1K power character that has blocker and has a pretty solid effect saying if your slash attribute character with a cost of 5 or less other than this character would be KO'd by your opponent's effect, you can rest this character instead. So it kind of has like KO blocker is like kind of the way that I would describe it. Your opponent plays a Mars, they're playing Emu, your opponent plays a Mars, and they're wanting to KO your Tashigi. That really sucks. wait, I'm just gonna rest Koshiro. Now my TCG lives. That's really nice. So, into matchups like Emu, where it's really nice for you to have the ability to protect your stuff, Koshiro is really cool. Outside of that, is it very useful? No. But it can be really solid into certain decks. So, there you go. But then, besides that, I got the last card in the deck, the second, third, it's either the second or third best card in the entire deck. And the way that this deck usually wins the game and ends the game, especially, you know, getting some extra broken shenaniganry off of stuff like Cavendish, Luffy is the man who will become King of the Pirates. This is the endgame of the deck. This event, that I have 4 copies of, is a 3-cost event, has a trigger, a 20 or leader characters gets plus 1k power for the turn. Don't really care. But it has a very simple main effect. Set your Roanoa Zoro leader as active. Very simple. You have however many Dawn open. You have like 5 Dawn open or something like that. You play, or no, you have 4 Dawn open. You spend 3. You play Luffy is the man who will become King of the Pirates. You restand your Zoro that has 4 Dawn on it. It's a 9k swing. Boom, you send 9 into your opponent's face. That's really cool. Then you swing with the Cavendish. This is where Cavendish can be the most broken in this deck. You restand 2 your Dawn. Boom, now you're at 3 Dawn again. You spend those 3 Dawn, and then you restand Zoro again, send 9 into your opponent's face again. That's really broken. You might not have even used the, restand effect on the Zoro leader itself, so you might be able to swing another 9k into your opponent's face. Basically, what this card allows you to do is have a pretty solidly big, Roanoa Zoro leader, and 8, 9k power, and then be able to restand and attack with it 3 times in a turn, 4 times in a turn. Now, I know I'm saying that very casually, like it's not super broken, but it is super broken. And that is how this deck wins. And yes, I understand that Mihawk is a deck that exists. And while you are not gonna really win into Mihawk, I mean, there's a small chance, right? It's like with Emu. There's a chance. Is it a big chance? Probably not, but it's still a chance. Besides Mihawk, you still have, in my opinion, a fairly decent matchup into Boa. I mean, yes, Zoro generally struggles into yellow decks because of triggers, because of the ability to gain life and that kind of whatnot. But with Boa, I feel like Zoro, I don't know a crazy amount about Boa, but from what I know, Zoro seems to have a decent... Now, I'm not saying he's going to win every single time or anything, but I'm just saying Zoro can win into Boa, in my opinion, for sure, more often than Mihawk. And Boa is the best deck in this next meta. So, having a deck that, in my opinion, can go probably at least 50-50 into it, maybe even more, that's really cool. Besides that, some of the better decks in the new meta, like Bonnie, UP Luffy, those are really solid decks. Zoro does decently well into them. Is he going to win every time? No. But he has pretty solid matchups into them, especially if you know how to play Zoro right. And Ace, Zoro's still good into Ace. Ace is still a really solid deck. And, some other older decks, Zoro is still really good into. So, while Zoro has a pretty awful matchup in the Mihawk and still sucks in the Emu, I would say, generally speaking, Zoro hasn't fallen off. I would say Zoro definitely still has a chance to be a contender and do some really solid work in OP14. So, leave a comment down below. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me that I'm crazy, or that I'm genius, or whatever. Honestly, I could see either case being likely and being the truth. But with all that said, I will see you all in the next deck tech video. Maybe for a Luffy deck, maybe for another spicy deck. Who knows? I'll get to that, you know, whenever I upload my next video. But with all that said, I'll see you all then. And have a great rest of your day. Or night.